Hey everybody, I wanted to do a quick video on wiring up a GFCI outlet. GFCI outlet, or a ground fault circuit interrupter outlet, is made for wet areas. So it may be near a bathroom sink, near a shower, could be outside on a porch. So a lot of universal building codes require a GFCI outlet to be used in certain areas. If your house was built in the old days, before the days of GFCI, and you want to add an outlet, or if you want to change out one of your outlets, you may have to switch it out for a GFCI. So I want to talk about that just quickly. I'm working on the back porch today, installing some outlets, and I just wanted to go ahead and cover this while I was at it. All right, so here's the box we're working with, and I have already gone to the panel, the breaker panel, and shut off the one for the back porch. And I got out my circuit tester. If you're going to do any electric work, you want to have a circuit tester just to see if you've got any live wires. Even though your box is labeled back porch, you may flip it off and then come back out here and actually one wire was mislabeled, or who knows. So it's always good to test. And so we just hold this on the black wire just to verify that there's no power to this circuit. If it goes all the way up there and says high and the red bar comes on and it beeps, you know you've got electric still energizing this wire. These are dead, so we're in good shape here. This one's real nice. This is a Klein. Just got this from one of the big box stores, but it's dust-proof, waterproof. It's got a little built-in flashlight, which is handy when you're working in the panel. So definitely pick yourself up one of those. Also got a pair of cutter strippers from Klein. And these are real handy, pretty inexpensive, but nice cushiony grip and good for stranded or solid wire. And these have been a real good pair here. They do crimping as well. So if you're putting on like a butt connector or a ring connector, you can use this inside part for crimping. So now we got our two sets of wires here. Got our hot wire, and we've got our neutral and our ground. And what the situation is here, this is power coming in, and I've already verified that. What I did is I left the panel on, took my circuit tester, tested both wires, figured out which one was hot with them separated like this. And this one was the hot lead, so I've got this one pushed to the side here. And then this jumper's off and goes to the next outlet, which is down the way there. So anytime you do that, one of these wires is going to be called line and one of them is called load. And the reason that's important is that if you look at the back of your outlet, it's going to tell you line or load. And you got to have these wired up correctly, or it could cause this thing to trip even when there's not a hazard. And then that's going to be really frustrating for you. This one can be wired a couple of ways. It can be back wired, which is what I'm going to do today. And to do that, you actually strip the wire back this far, and then you shove the wire in the hole, and then you tighten down the screw. Inside here there's a little clamp, and so when you tighten down the screw there, that tightens up against the wire inside and gives you a nice secure connection. So if we look at our instructions here, this will give you a quick primer on line versus load. And basically line is coming from your service panel, so your breaker panel or your fuse box, and then your load is going out to another receptacle. So we know that this one, I already checked it, that was hot with the panel on, this one was not. And so we know that this is our line and this is our load. So let me go ahead and strip these, and then we'll shove them in the back here and get this thing wired up. So to strip a wire with these, it's pretty handy. It's got the gauge markings on there. Let's see if I can get it in a place where you can actually see it. See how it says 12, 14, 16. And see, it's got a nice burn mark right there. That's what happens if you have too many people working in the house at once and somebody accidentally switches on a breaker that you had already turned off. You end up cutting a hot wire, which is never a good surprise, and that arced and burnt the cutters. But thankfully, with these insulated handles, I wasn't harmed. But That's why you got to double check, triple check. Even when you're super careful, sometimes things happen. So just know which type of wire you're working with here, and then using that, we're going to go ahead and pinch down around the jacketing, and then you just kind of wiggle it a little bit. It's a little easier to do with 2 hands, but you wiggle a little bit and it just pulls the insulation right off of there. And again, you can use this handy little wire gauge on the back of it and check it, make sure you got enough stripped off, and that tells me that I left it a little short. So we'll go ahead and take another little nibble off of it. And now we'll check it against it one more time. And now we got just the right amount. So let me go ahead and strip the rest of these off exactly like that, and then we'll go ahead and shove them in and tighten them up. All right, so I got this stripped off. We're ready to go ahead and put the wires in and get them tightened up. They try to make this dummy proof for you. So again, this is the line side. So we know that that's the hot wire coming from the panel. And if you look at it here, right next to that little hole, it says hot, and that one says white. And up at the top here, it's got the little dash marks, and that's for your ground right there. So they try to make this dummy proof. You know, in the old days, a lot of them didn't have all these markings on there, and it was a little bit more ambiguous. Sometimes you had to get out your instructions there and double check everything. Another thing to remember is that black or hot wires go with the brass screw. Black brass. Both of them start with B. That's an easy way to remember it. And typically the white or the neutral wire goes with this lighter colored silver screw. Things get really interesting when you're wiring up 3- and 4-way switches. You've got all kinds of different colors of screws there, but we'll cover that in a different video. So I'm going to go ahead and let's start with the line side. See if I can get this for you here. So again, you run that wire up in there, just like that. And then we'll go ahead and tighten up the screw. And that's going to be impossible to do with one hand. So let me switch off here for just a second, and then I'll bring it right back to you. All right, so I got our hot lead on the line side. Got it all tightened down. In case you wonder what kind of tool I'm using here, this is just a little multi-bit screwdriver I picked up at the big box store. I'm actually using a little square drive bit, if you can appreciate that thing. But it's actually really handy. If you look, this looks like a Phillips head, sort of, and a flathead, sort of. And then in the middle there, you've got that little square drive hole there. So you can actually get those little tiny square drives, and they will fit any of the screws on a modern outlet. And they're a lot less likely to strip. Flatheads work pretty well, but a lot of times the Phillips, number 2 Phillips, it will start to strip the threads long before one of these little square drives. So I tend to use that square drive almost exclusively when I'm doing work on these things. So we got our hot lead on there. Now we can go ahead and get our neutral wire. Come on. So the neutral wire goes on the other side. Get that shoved up in there. And again, we'll tighten this thing down. All right, so once I finished the line side, I went ahead and came down to the other end here and did the load side. So these are the wires that are going out of the box down to the next outlet down the way here. Now, pretty easy. Again, back wiring stuff's pretty easy, especially with these outlets. Super easy to put these things together. Now, you may be wondering, what do we do with our ground wires? We have one ground screw here, and we have 2 ground wires. Typically what you'll do is you'll twist them together, and then you'll hook one of the wires up. I'm gonna make sure that these things are good and clean too. See, they got some paint on them. So I'm gonna clean them up real well and make sure that there's a real good connection here. Otherwise it could cause this thing to malfunction, not operate correctly. So let me clean those up real quick, and then we'll actually twist these things together and then wrap one of them around there and get that thing wired down tight. So I've got our ground wires cleaned off here, and now I'm just twisting these 2 together we'll just cut a little bit of this excess off here just to make sure it's, again, all these things are easy to do with 2 hands. Give that a quick twist here just to make sure it's good and tight. Don't want that thing falling off later. Okay, so we got that good and tight, and now we'll bring it up, push our wires in just a little bit, and we'll wrap it around the end of our ground screw here and get that down good and tight as well. All right, so you can see I have the ground wire under the ground terminal there and got it nice and tight. Traditional outlets, you would make a loop and loop it around the screw 2/3 of the way and then tighten it down. This one actually has a brass plate that pinches the wire, and there's a serrated plate underneath there that grabs it. And so you can actually just tighten this down just like I've done here. Now, the challenge is packing all this wiring so that it goes back in there. I tend to bend the wires kind of in opposite directions so that it actually creates like an accordion effect. And then you're able to pretty easily compress those wires back into the box. These are a small box because we're fitting them in between bricks here. So it's actually gonna be a little bit of a challenge to get that all packed in there. So let me work on that and get it screwed down tight. All right, so there you have it. It is in the box now. And again, it's a small box. And then the GFCI outlets are big. And so then you got that to contend with, and you got the outlets, the wiring to contend with, especially when it's a line load situation. So you got 2 pairs of wires in there. So it's a pain to get all that stuff packed in there. But got it packed in, got the screws tightened down. And now I'm gonna go back to the breaker panel and energize the outlet, and then we'll test it as prescribed by the little instruction manual here. Okay, so I've energized the breaker, and now we've got power to this outlet. And if we go ahead and plug in our handy dandy little outlet tester, see that both orange lights light up there. These things are slick. If you don't have one, they're really handy for checking your outlets. It's got little codes based on which lights are lit. And if you look down at the bottom there, it says correct. The 2 amber lights should be lit. So we plug that in, and you can see our 2 amber lights are lit. Now, if you hit the test button, it kills it. And then if you reset, it comes back on again. So that's how you know that the outlet is functioning just like it's supposed to. It does have a warning light right there, that tiny little thing. If that thing starts to flash, then you know that there's something wrong with your GFCI outlet, and you should go ahead and replace it. All right, well, I hope that little tutorial on installation of a GFCI outlet was helpful. I've got a little cover that I'm going to install here, a little weatherproof cover, and I'm going to go ahead and do that and then wrap this project up because I've got some trim work to do inside the house. So this was just a little quick side project. I still need to put the rest of these outlets in around the house, but at least we've got our GFCI outlet in here, and we're going to be safe to use this receptacle for power on the back porch here so we can get some more of this trim work done. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave those down below, any comments or anything. Be sure to give it a like if you would, please. Hit that little bell so you get notifications when we put new content out there. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And keep sharing the channel with your friends and family. We'll see you guys again real soon. Thanks.